Chapter 23. Call for Help. The transfer of the neural encasements went smoother than Jim could have hoped. True to his word, Mr. Carvel had them all carefully placed in several storage units not far from the mansion. Nate hooked up all the units to a simplified shared space that sort of looked like a high-tech mall. A simple program allowed them to move from their separate white rooms into the virtual mall at will so the head boys could socialize at their leisure. Laura agreed to continue her work, counseling the traumatized, what she did in one of the otherwise vacant mall spaces. This finally allowed the head boys to experience something close to community instead of merely inmates at a prison camp. After some begging, pleading, and a few threats, Janice was able to talk Nate into allowing her to keep Charlie the shark. Jim really wanted to see that shark deleted, but he had to admit they all owed Janice for her work. She even took the shark with her to the virtual mall and paraded around like they were married. Jim knew this because during the one, and only, time he visited the mall space, she was there with the shark. Again, Charlie seemed polite to everyone but him. It growled and loomed over Jim the second it saw him. Janice had to pull it away. Jim asked Nate why it seemed to be programmed to harass him, but Nate couldn't see any reason behind it. Its AI code was a mysterious mess of self-perpetuating neural simulations designed to keep its actions new and exciting. How that translated into harass Jim was anyone's guess. Finally free from AZ's cruel manipulations, Jim ditched the jester outfit for a fine suit. His elderly body, though, remained. Having spent so much time in a body so close to his real-world body, he started getting used to being his old, withered self. There was something comfortable about being close to what he really was, minus the clown makeup and outfit. It was something real as opposed to all of the random avatars he had over his years at New U. He felt dignified again, almost flesh and blood. Tragedy had dragged him away from the fantasy of VR, but it had reunited him with an inner truth. This was who he truly was. It even made him stronger. That 110-pound, balding, skinny old man he now saw in the mirror was worth 100 muscle-bound supermen. Sarah, too, was finally able to change back to her older self, and, although her chosen avatar was more athletic and at least 4 inches taller than Jim, he felt they matched well with one another. Nate was happy to see the two back to their former selves, and utterly ecstatic to join them face-to-face in Jim's new office. With the ghost system, he could finally stand in the same room as Jim and Sarah. He tried to hug Jim as best he could hug thin air. It was quite a change not to see the boy looming over him like a giant. The only thing that would have made this moment better was if Rick was there to join them. All was not well with his fellow neural encasements, though. Internet access was still cut off, not that there were any VR environments left for them to visit online. They were still trapped individually in their small rooms when not together in the singular mall. Also, many of them seemed to hold Jim accountable for AZ's actions, even though he clearly couldn't have stopped them. Sarah defended him as much as she could, but they didn't seem to care for her either. Jim chalked it up to an adjustment period. What he cared about was that they were all safe, not that they all loved him. As long as Nate and Sarah were with him, the rest could be as bitter as they desired. And not that Jim had a lot of time to worry about their anger anyways. The work of creating a new, trusted form of currency was a massive endeavor. Even Alexander Hamilton would have balked at the sheer scale of the task. And the tasks seemed to grow every day. Mr. Carvel asked him to expand his market value system far beyond just the resources of Seattle. Jim had to generate models for entire spheres of influence before the numbers started to match existing supply and demand. It was a daunting task, but one he felt confident he could overcome. When Nate wasn't busy helping the head boys, he was busy with the trade network. With the greater reach and resources of the syndicate, he was able to centralize a remote control system so a few head boys could handle all of the stations from the safety of Mr. Carvel's estate. Mr. Carvel brought in several more tech guys to help the station roll out. This led to some issues, though, as they simply couldn't fathom taking orders from a child. They tried to push Nate aside and shelve his work without so much as even looking at what he had accomplished. Jim requested Mr. Carvel put his foot down and forced them to work with Nate. With their egos suppressed, it didn't take long for Nate to demonstrate his remarkable skill and earn their respect. Mr. Carvel himself remarked on his amazement with Nate's abilities. "It's quite a package I picked up here," said Mr. Carvel. "Who knew such gems were hidden away amongst all that trash?" This piqued Mr. Carvel's interest in what other geniuses might be hidden amongst the other head boys. Jim, carefully, asked Mr. Carvel not to force any of the encasements to do anything they didn't want to. Mr. Carvel was adamant he wouldn't abuse them like the gang did, but he did ask to see the personnel files on the 126 remaining head boys. Jim felt wary of the idea, but ran it by a few people. It was Laura who suggested that employing a few of them, with their consent, might take their minds off their current limited freedom. Jim suggested Janice help Mr. Carvel in the personnel overview. Within a few days, it seemed like the Bucket Geezer Brigade was back up and running, albeit under newer, less evil management. While this worried Jim a bit, he was quite distracted with something new and very important. While setting up the trade network and researching West Coast markets, Mr. Carvel gave Jim access to what was left of the internet. Full and unbridled access. This was an opportunity Jim could not pass up. He popped out of his real-world office and into his virtual white room. It was a huge step down from the office, but he felt more secure there. The likelihood of anyone actively spying on him in there was very low. He took the virtual phone from the desk in the room and texted Nate, "How secure is the line now?" After a while, a message shot back. "Are you in the office or are you in your white room?" "White room. Why?" texted Jim. "Our line is secure. The office records holographic surveillance. Do not use this there. Connection in the white room is super secure. Data appears as filler bits. Don't stay in the white room too long. They'll get suspicious," texted Nate. "Yes," said Jim out loud. Then he remembered his case still had a speaker that he could be overheard through. Jim quickly texted back, "Got internet access. Full deal. We gotta contact the other headboy groups while we can. How can I get you online?" Nate texted back, "Yeah. I'll handle it. Give me a day." Jim dumped the little tablet on the desk and popped back into the office. As he returned to work, he fought in his head over what he should do next. They had a really good thing here with the syndicate, but that would only last as long as he was useful. Money and class aside, Mr. Carvel was still a shark, just like AZ, only much, much bigger. The only people who could really help them would be the missing group of head boys that left New U. Of course, it was questionable what they could really do. Was it a waste of time to even look for them? Unless they had some hired muscle, what could a group of rogue neural encasements do? Hold down a stack of papers with aggressive intent? Really keep a door open? Even if Nate could, somehow, load them all into a truck and drive them to Canada, or wherever they went, would they even be welcome? And if Mr. Carvel caught them trying to flee, what would be his response? Was Jim just putting his people at risk for nothing? Jim had been playing it safe as much as he could, and now several head boys were dead. Rick wasn't smart, yes, but he was brave. He at least tried to help them, even if it had only got him killed. If a rogue group of head boys were out there, Jim had to contact them. For all he knew, rescuers were out there, ready and willing, and all he had to do was make contact. Even if the chances were slim, Jim had to try. The next day, Nate popped into Jim's office to do some diagnostics on Jim's case. Within a few minutes, Nate had a backdoor set up through Jim's case into Mr. Carvel's systems. "Don't let my work slow you down, Jim," said Nate as his eyes motioned at the ghostly keyboard in front of the computer monitor on the desk. Jim looked at Nate and slowly started to type. As he did, the data on the screen didn't reflect what he was typing, but instead appeared to be pounding out random words, and there was something wrong with his hands. They moved like they were some stranger's hands, completely out of sync with his body. In Jim's vision appeared what he was actually typing, floating in his sight like it was part of his eyeballs. Nate nodded as Jim looked at him in confusion. Then Nate slid on a pair of data display glasses and started to type on a strange-looking little black keyboard that had no markings. Words from Nate started to appear as part of a chat window in Jim's eyes. "Don't worry, only you can see that floating display. I've been thinking about how we might securely talk to each other since the night the old guy showed up. I got it all covered. If anyone looks at your avatar's ghost, it's typing the same gibberish words you see on the screen," texted Nate. Jim looked closely at his hands as they typed. It was crazy to see them doing something completely different than what he was really doing. They did match the gibberish on the screen, though. The illusion was seamless. Jim typed out, "You're freaking incredible, Nate. Q couldn't have come up with stuff this clever." Nate texted back, "Who's Q?" "Don't worry about it. Can you get on the internet and find the headboy groups? If they are out there," texted Jim. "Already done that the second I hooked up to your case. I got about 12 hits on the dark web. What do you want to do?" texted Nate in response. This was the question Jim had wrestled with for the past day. If he said too much, the other headboys and himself could end up at the bottom of Elliott Bay within an hour. For now, Mr. Carvel was treating them well, but he was not a man to be crossed. Too little, and he might as well not have tried at all. But he had to get the attention of Matthew and Jacob, if they were still out there. It had to be something only they would know. Send this message out to all of the hits. The Kid Crushers survived the fire. Evac needed. Over 100 left. Same town. Typed Jim. Kid Crushers? Texted Nate back. Old gaming name. They'll know what I mean. How long do you think it'll take for them to respond? Texted Jim. Message sent, but they can't respond. Any communication back here will be tracked. The data pleas are still in effect. Sorry, Jim. This message is one way. I can search the boards later, see if anyone posted anything related to Kid Crusher, texted Nate. Thanks, Nate. If they're out there, they'll know what it means. So how do we get out of this mode? Texted Jim. You can fix that controller bug by hitting these keys, Nate suddenly said out loud. Nate took off the data glasses, reached down to Jim's holographic keyboard, and motioned for the buttons Control and M. Jim nodded and hit those keys together, causing his floating display to vanish. His fingers quickly snapped back to where his hands actually should have been. While the effect was jarring to Jim, to anyone else watching, it looked like nothing changed. Jim held up his hands for a second, his mind adjusting to his fingers returning back to their normal locations. Are you all right there, Jim? Asked Nate as he looked at Jim with a raised eyebrow. Oh yeah, fine, said Jim as he put his hands back down. It was stupid of him to give away that anything had actually occurred, but he couldn't help it. For a while there, it was like he had 4 hands instead of 2. The momentary stupidity reminded Jim of Rick when he first saw their virtual phones. Damn that brave, stupid meathead. Jim hoped this attempt to contact help wouldn't go as badly.